Hello, my name is Mr. Feeney. Today we're just going to be talking about some lab safety procedures, the do's and don'ts of the lab. The reason why we're doing this today is because we're going to start some experiments soon. And working in the lab and doing experiments is a lot of fun. But before you have that right and privilege to enter that laboratory, we're going to need to go over some of the basics of lab safety and what it means to be in the lab, what I, as the teacher, expect of you, and what you should expect of your classmates. So let's get into it. What do you say? So first, we're just going to start off with some of the safety equipment that you're going to see in PPE or personal protective equipment. So I have here just some examples of what you're going to see and what you should be wearing in the lab, mainly the safety eyewear. That is one of the most important. Protecting your eyes is vital when doing a lot of experiments, among other things. But it's an easy access for chemicals to enter into your body, that and your mouth. So you'll be wearing those in the lab. So expect to see that again. Here I have a face shield. Face shields are, you probably won't experience that in a lot of your lab experiments here, but I want you to be aware of them. They protect the entire face, including mouth, so if you spill anything, it's just an extra layer of protection. Here you can see this man wearing an apron, and you will wear this at some point throughout the year. Aprons are vital at protecting your clothing. It's just an extra layer of defense to protect you against any chemicals that you're going to be working with. Tongs are to pick up anything that may be hot. We're going to use Bunsen burners in the lab, and things called crucibles, which are it's just a bowl that can withstand a lot of heat. And obviously you don't want to touch that with your hands. So you're going to use these tongs here to lift that up. And then again, you also have heat resistant gloves if you're not using the tongs, which could be used in some scenarios. And lastly, another of the most common PPE that you will see is the gloves in the bottom right there. So now that you know a little bit about what you'll be wearing within the lab, this is what I expect of you before you can even walk through that door. So this is a way to prevent any potential hazards within the lab in your clothing. So you will not be permitted to wear sandals, no open-toed shoes. Your shoes must be closed and secure. You're not allowed to wear shorts. You have to wear pants. You're not allowed to wear any loose clothing or jewelry in the lab either. And if you have long hair, I will ask you to tie it back just to prevent any contamination of chemicals. If you do spill chemicals on you, you want to have your clothing as a layer of defense from your skin. So before you even enter the lab, I will be checking for these things. So again, before you enter that lab, you are not allowed to bring any food or beverages into the laboratory when you are about to do an experiment. And even if somehow there is food or drinks in the lab, you are not allowed to actively ingest any food or drink any liquids of any sort, whether it be a soda that you brought in or especially some of the chemicals that you'll be working with. You are absolutely not allowed to drink anything. And then eating also includes chewing gum. You are not allowed to chew gum in the lab. I will ask you to spit it out before you walk through that door. And again, the last thing I want to talk about before we really get into some of the nitty-gritty emergency procedures is when you're in that lab, I want you to be respectful to not only me, but also your fellow classmates. There are a lot of chemicals that can be dangerous to you and others around you. So it is very important for you to be respectful of what you're working with and to have knowledge of what you're doing and not to goof around in order to protect not only you, but yourself. So I ask you, no yelling. I should be able to talk over you if I need to address the class. There should be no running around the lab. Absolutely not. Just like a pool, no running. There should be no throwing of anything. No throwing paper balls at each other, the chemicals, anything. And I ask you to be prepared when you're in the lab. So that means to read the lab ahead of time and know the safety precautions going into it, so you can be best prepared to do the experiment today. And if you violate any of these things, as well as the clothing conducts that I mentioned in the last slide, you will be removed from the lab or not permitted to enter. So again, labs are a lot of fun. These experiments are really cool, and it's awesome to see real life examples of some of the stuff we're going to be studying in this class. And I want each and every one of you to be able to participate in these experiments. So really, I can't stress this enough. Please be respectful. Wear the clothing you're expected to within the lab, and no goofing around. We can have fun, but in a respectful and dignified way. So that all being said, accidents happen. Something is bound to go wrong, and that's okay. All I ask is you be prepared and you know what to do in case those accidents do happen. And I'm going to get into some examples of those accidents in the next couple of slides here. But first and foremost, if anything happens, contact the teacher. Notify the teacher that something went wrong, whether that be a flask dropped on the ground, a mini fire happened, or a chemical spill. Anything out of the ordinary or you're not sure of. Ask me, ask the teacher immediately after it happens. Don't wait. So if in the event of an injury or anything, there is a first aid kit in the laboratory that you can use. The teacher, I may ask you to go to the nurse, depending on what the injury is. And if you get any chemical spills in the eye or on yourself, we have eye washes and showers available that you will need to go to immediately. And if you had an unknown allergy, we do have an EpiPen. I asked the nurse, we have an EpiPen that can be available to you in the event of an allergy. So again, please, if anything goes wrong, notify the teacher immediately. So, and again, in the event of an emergency, such as a fire, know your exits. I'll point them out at the beginning of the lab when we go there. But if I ask you to please exit the room, I want you to be aware of where the nearest exit to you is. And if there is a spill that happens and you drop something, never grab the flask as it's falling. Let it fall. It's okay. I can clean up glassware. We don't want to risk you cutting yourself on the glass as it's falling or getting chemicals on your hands. So if something does fall, please do not try to grab it. Let it go. We can clean it up after. And again, notify the teacher or me. And if you have an injury, there's first aid available in the room. And again, always, I can't stress this enough. Tell the teacher if anything happens immediately. So if you get a spill on you of any chemical of any sort, we have a couple options for you. If you get a chemical in the eye, we have an eye wash station, and you're going to want to flush out your eyes in the eye wash station for 15 minutes. And I know it's kind of gross, but sometimes you're going to have to lift up your eyelid and flush it out to remove any sort of chemicals you have in there. You want to make absolutely sure that every trace of the chemical is gone and out of your eye. That is why I ask you to flush continuously for 15 minutes. And if you get a chemical on any other part of your body, we have showers available. They're super easy. It's just a hook that you pull and it dumps water on you. You're going to want to, if it got onto your clothing, you're going to want to remove that clothing. So we do have a modesty curtain that you can put up around you so that you can take your clothing without everybody seeing you without clothing. So again, if you spill anything on you and you're not sure if it is starting to burn or anything, immediately use one of these things and either notify me or have a classmate notify me that something is wrong and you made this spill. So these are available to you in the event of a spill. So in the event of a fire, number one, don't panic. It's okay. We have procedures in place to help you be safe. So again, notify the teacher immediately once you notice a fire. Sound the alarm if appropriate, whether the teacher says the okay or the fire is clearly out of hand, and then again, exit the room in an orderly fashion, not panicking. And if you were on fire, you need to employ the stop, drop, and roll method, which everybody knows since grade school. Or you have the shower available to you. And in the event of the use of an extinguisher, employ PASS, which is an acronym for pull the pin, aim the nozzle, squeeze the trigger, and sweep. Start from the outside of the flames towards the center of the flames. So you're going to be handling a lot of chemicals in this lab, and some of them are more harmful than others. And it's important to not only handle them correctly, but also understand what the labels on the bottles mean. So only handle any chemicals if the teacher gives you permission. Do not handle anything if you are not allowed to or the teacher does not specifically say you can. Try to keep all the chemicals within small containers and do not fill any hazardous waste containers over 3/4 full. And I ask that you always wear the proper PPE, and that includes goggles and gloves when handling any of these chemicals. And here I have an infographic of some of the labels that you will see in the lab. Poison, combustible, biohazard, explosive, high voltage, or corrosive are just the main ones that you will see that you want to avoid coming in contact with. You work with them safely. As long as you follow procedures, nothing will go wrong. But it's important to be aware of what you're working with. So, if in the event of dropping in glassware, such as a flask or a beaker, again, like I said earlier, do not grab for it. Let it fall, let it break. You do not want to cut yourself on glass. They're very sharp and you will bleed a lot. Nobody wants to see that. Yeah, it would be gross. So, and leave the glassware there and notify the teacher and tell them information of where the spill occurred, if you got any on you, if you cut yourself, and what was the chemical that was in the container when it broke. The teacher will clean it up for you and deal with it from there. Don't just leave the spill there and the empty glass there. Immediately notify the teacher, leave it, and the teacher will come help you. And another thing when working with a lot of these chemicals, that they will have aromas to them. Some good, some not. You never want to just sniff something. You don't want to take a flask, hold it right under your nose, and take a big whiff. That is very bad because some of these chemicals can be harmful to you. It's called they're volatile chemicals, which means that you can smell them. They create this vapor, and they will hurt you. So you always want to waft. If the teacher asks you to smell, always waft. It reduces the amount of chemicals that are going to come in contact with your nose, while still being able to pick up any scent that the teacher's asking you to pick up. Never sniff. So once all lab's done, you're going to want to clean up and dispose of hazardous materials. I do expect you to clean up after yourself. That means chemical waste should be properly disposed of according to my or another teacher's instructions. Never just pour any chemicals down the drain unless the teacher specifically says so. If you're unsure, do not pour down the drain. It is very bad. Leave the chemical there and ask. Don't just leave it there forever. Always just ask the teacher. They will know and they will help you. I will help you. And once you're all done and cleaned up, before you leave the lab or touch things like your phone or your hair or what have you, wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. You want to make sure that anything you're working with does not come on your hands and leave the laboratory with you. So there will come a time in this lab or maybe your biology lab where you're going to be working with, you may dissect an animal. First and foremost, be respectful. This is a tough lab, but it's an important information to know. So there's a lot of ethical things that can go with dissecting a dead animal. And it is important to be respectful of not only the animal, but also your classmates. Some classmates may be more comfortable with it than others. Please be respectful of their opinions as well as your own. No roughhousing with the animals, no teasing each other with them. Do the lab. You can learn a lot, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And so some of the preservatives that these animals are kept in are volatile and toxic. So you're going to want to be wearing goggles and gloves and an apron when you're dissecting. And also, when you're dissecting, you're going to be using a scalpel most likely, excuse me, a scalpel. So when you're using the scalpel, you never want to cut towards you. You always want to cut away to reduce risk of cutting yourself. So there may come a time where there's a living animal in the room, or you see a living animal on the outside that may be dying, or you think might be dying, and you want to come in and bring in the lab and show everybody. Please ask the teacher first and show respect, always. The teacher, animals can carry diseases that we can't see and don't know about. So you want to handle them properly and always wash your hands if you do happen to handle a living animal. But please never bring anything into class without permission, and that includes like soil samples or dead animals or roadkill or living animals, anything like that. Please ask the teacher before you bring anything into the class. And lastly, the last thing I want to talk about here is ask questions. If there's anything you're unsure of, please ask. I will help you. Any teacher will help you. And you're not in this alone, and these experiments are going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it's chemistry class. You're going to blow stuff up. You're going to see some cool color changes. It's going to be a blast. But if you want the privilege and the right to do all these experiments, you need to be respectful of these lab safety rules that I have just talked to you through. And if you're unsure of anything, ask, please. So thank you for joining me for this little lab safety presentation here. Now that we're done through it, I have just 10 questions for you, a little quiz based on everything. All the answers here were in the talk I just gave. So if you could please answer those questions. And then after the questions, I have a little game here. So it's an example lab of a lot of people doing things right and a lot of people doing things wrong. So I'm going to want you to circle a minimum of 5. There's a lot more than 5 things going wrong here. A lot more than 5 hazards, but I want you to circle at least 5. And so before we get in the lab here, I'm gonna send home a contract with everything I talked about here today. And I'm gonna ask you and your parents to sign it and turn it into me before you can enter the lab. And lastly, I don't think any of you kids care about this, but here are the references that I use to make sure that I know how to be the proper lab teacher that I am meant to be, and to make sure that all of you kids are safe and work hard and, have fun. It's a blast. Thank you.